From a young age, most of us are pressured by media on how we should look and what is considered beautiful. Especially with social media, we see so many beauty trends over the years, from heroin chic to BBLs, plastic surgery, celebrities and influencers on the covers of magazines, trending hashtags like thinspo and fitspo. All this media shows up and tells us what we need to look like in order to be beautiful, and that leads us to self-comparison, low self-esteem, and in worst cases, a toxic relationship with our appearances and bodies. Hi! My name is Jaden, and I make commentary videos on culture, media, and kind of whatever's going on in the world that I feel like yapping about. And I made a poll asking what video you guys wanted to see next, and beauty standards was the winner. So here we are, talking about beauty standards, and this is a doozy. There's a lot to cover. Beauty standards have been a problem for years. Like, since the early dawn of time, there have always been beauty standards put on to people. Whether it's men, women, transgender, non-binary, everyone has had to deal with beauty standards, whether they're vocal about it or not. Everyone is affected by it. It's not just limited to women. That's the one thing I want to make very clear. Men, transgender, and non-binary folks also have to deal with beauty standards, okay? Getting that out of the way. Also, trigger warning, as beauty standards do mention some triggering topics involved in mental health and body image. Just want to put that out there. If this topic is hard for you to listen to, you can cancel out of the video. I definitely understand. It's okay. We don't want to hurt you or upset you or trigger you in any way. Let's start with beauty standards from the dawn of time, because I have beauty standards here all the way from the ancient Greece period up until now. That's how long this has been a thing. Beauty standards have also changed a lot over time. They've been influenced by social, cultural, and economical factors, such as like world wars, the pandemic. Any kind of big world event does make a shift in beauty. So I have a list here from the prehistory, early representation of women's bodies, like the Venus figurines show full-figured silhouettes. So back in the prehistorical days, a fuller body was the ideal. In ancient Greece, they used lots of gods and goddesses in Greek mythology, which would influence beauty standards, which you would also see referenced in a lot of history books and stuff. They do mention the goddesses being super beautiful, and obviously that would encourage people trying to want to look like that. In the 1900s to 1950s, the flapper style was more of a slimmer figure, which is when people started to want more of a slim body shape. That's also when smoking became more of a thing, and a lot of people were doing that in order to remain thin. 1950s was when Marilyn Monroe kind of came into the picture, and then the hourglass figure, blonde hair, red lipstick was kind of the ideal, and everyone wanted to look like her, because that's when movie stars and celebrities really started to take off and become an influence on people. 1960s to 1970s was Twiggy, and then again, more slender models started to take over, and in the 1980s it was thin, toned, and athletic. So this was around the time heroin chic kind of started to come into the picture a little bit. More people were getting into drug use in order to make themselves look thinner. Plastic surgery wasn't super big at this time, so a lot of people were just kind of doing other methods to look a certain way. In the 2000s, it was still very thin, but to the mid-2000s, people started to become more inclusive, and we finally started to actually see plus-size models and women of color, men of color, transgender folks all like actually represented and walking on runways, which was a pretty big thing. Although, the thing I do want to point out is even when they would let plus-size models and people of color be models and represent this new ideal, they still had to fit a specific standard. They still had to have perfect skin. They could be plus-size, but not too plus-size. They could be masculine, but not too masculine. See where I'm coming from? They still had standards. Technology was definitely a big contender to why beauty standards have evolved so much over time, because obviously in the early history days, we didn't have social media, we didn't have internet. They would just have they would see people, or they would create art and be like, oh, this is beautiful, this is what we want to look like. But now we have celebrities and companies telling us what we should look like. Section 2, beauty in different cultures. Beauty standards are actually different throughout the world. Now, most people go for the typical all-American beauty standard, you know, blonde hair, blue eyes, lean, tall, beautiful, like a C-cup breast size, thin waist, hourglass figure, but still thin. Disgusting, I know, like, it's not just limited to North America, whatever kind of area. I was doing my research and I found a lot of information on beauty standards in, like, South Asia. So I'm so sorry if I mispronounced this, Myanmar in Southeast Asia, they actually had girls about 5 years old, they had to start putting metal rings on their necks. And then throughout the years, they would add another, like every 2 years, they would put on more metal rings. And this was to elongate their necks and make them more lean and tall. This practice gradually deforms the calvesals and placement of the ribs throughout the weight of the rings to create the illusion of a longer neck. These women eventually carry up to 24 rings around their necks. That does have a lot of medical issues over time because they are physically changing the shape of their neck, and then all the weight up here does cause a bunch of pressure on your ribs and your spine, so that can cause a lot of problems. In China, Chinese foot bending was a practice where they would literally bend your feet to 1/3 of the original size. It would cripple a lot of people that got it done, but it gave you a high social stand-in, and a lot of people would choose that over the actual ability to be mobile. Although after the revolution in 1911, foot binding was ended, thankfully. In the Middle East, South Asia, and Africa, the practice of skin whitening was common as well. So they did white sun tanning, indoor tanning, and self-tanning, which was more common in the West. So some people were trying to be more white, some people were trying to be more tan. Depending on where you were in the world, that was the standard. In South Korea, you are supposed to have a moon-shaped head, big eyes, and bright red lips. That is the standard, but it can't look like you're wearing makeup. You have to have the wide eyes, so if you naturally have like hooded eyes or angular eyes, they would have tape, and they would tape their eyes open. That way they had big round eyes, which I feel so bad because that doesn't sound very comfortable. In Africa, a lot of people of color as well, they have to have, well, what's considered beauty for them is the hourglass body shape. That's ideal mostly for predominantly black women. So if you are more lean, then you're not considered beautiful, which is the opposite of in like the Western, where being lean is considered more beautiful. But on the other side, more curvy and more thick is considered beautiful. According to Laura Engel, black women, but not other women of color, have been whitewashed. Whitewashing of black women is not only limited to whitening black individual skin tones, but also giving them straight hair textures and Eurocentric features. Magazines and beauty companies have been criticized for whitewashing the images of black female celebrities on covers, advertisements, and mostly photoshopping them with lighter skin. I hate that so much. Because, like, why does the skin tone matter? Honestly. Whether you are light-skinned or dark-skinned or anything in between, that shouldn't reflect on whether someone's considered beautiful or not. You can't control that. Beauty standards try to take something that we can't control and try to find a way for us to alter that, which is absolutely disgusting, and I hate that. Section 3, media and beauty. A lot of us today are online. That's a no-brainer. You're watching this video, ow! You're watching this video, you're online right now. And I'm sure you have come across TikToks or Instagrams or blog posts or even YouTube videos trying to tell you what is considered beautiful, how to be beautiful, what you should eat, what you should look like, what this person's fitness routine is, how to get that body, how to look like this, how to do that. It's everywhere and you can't escape it. Even if you just walk down the superstore and you see like magazines of models and you're like, oh my gosh, like, why don't I look like that? It's everywhere. You can't escape it. Social media and the online world in general and technology have really upped the beauty standard to the most unrealistic, artificial, manufactured standards. Because a lot of these are photoshopped or face-tuned or edited in some way. That magazine cover you see, Photoshop. That person's Instagram post, face-tuned. All those red carpet photos, those are edited before they get posted. It's not real. It's not. Even when people are advertising for beauty products, it's not real. They can promote this like skincare line and be like, this cleared all my acne. 9 times out of 10, they were just sent that product 2 days ago. They've not had the time to test the product and see if it actually works. With social media, there are a lot of trending hashtags that correspond with appearance. Hashtags like fitspo, which is telling young people the perfect body can be achieved with the diet program and products like diet supplements. A lot of these fitness influencers will also create either a fitness program or a supplemental diet, supplemental vitamin to get you to buy it so you can look like them. But everyone's bodies are different. You could do the exact same workout as someone and get different results because our bone structure is different. Some of us have wider bones, some of us have finer bones, some of us are naturally curvy, some of us aren't. That's not something we can change. So following someone's specific diet or workout plan isn't necessarily going to give you those exact results. Another hashtag is thinspo, which shows images of extremely thin bodies and shares quotes about discouraging eating. This was also a really big one back on Tumblr. You would see a lot of thinspo and heroin chic hashtags where people would post very malnourished bodies and use those as inspiration of what they wanted to look like, and they would give advice on how to achieve that. That is not healthy at all. Period. Cosmetic procedures have also become very normalized. Now, the thing with cosmetic procedures is if that's something you want to do for yourself, that's fine. But you have to be open about it. Like, example, Kylie Jenner. She created lip kits back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, whatever, to get people to, have lips just like hers. However, a few years later, she came out and admitted that she had filler in her lips. Those were not her lips. It was not achieved by the way she was doing her makeup. It was fake, but she was selling you a product saying, you can look like me by doing this, whereas she actually had work done. A lot of celebrities also get nose jobs or facelifts, and they're not open about that. And they tell people that they achieved it just by working out, eating right, using gua sha on their faces, or for men, look smacks in. None of that is gonna work. You physically can't change your bone structure without going under the knife. Now, if you do decide that is something you want and will benefit you and make you feel good, by all means go for it, but don't lie about it. A lot of celebrities have also gotten BBLs, which is a very, very dangerous surgery. It does have a fairly high death rate, which is scary. And some people ended up dissolving their BBLs because that wasn't the ideal beauty standard. They can afford to pay for these surgeries to fit the ideal beauty norms at the time, and then they can pay to get rid of it. Normal people that are not rich cannot afford that. They will do everything they can to try to reach these standards, and it's just not going to work. It's not realistic. Part 4, men's beauty standards. A lot of the times, people don't acknowledge that men also have beauty standards and pressure to look a certain way. That's not the case. Men do have beauty standards, it's just not talked about. I've talked to a lot of men about their thoughts on beauty standards as well, and they've all been open about it when asked. But it's not something they're going to bring up, it's not something you see portrayed often in media. but it is there. Throughout time, being masculine has been the ideal. Although if you look back in the early medieval age, they had something called, what was it, like a pitch bird, like a bird perch belly or something. Men would actually wear fake stomachs to make their stomachs more rounded. And over time, of course, that was no longer the standard, and men had to start looking more lean. And then men had to start looking more buff, and then they had to be a perfect in between. It was always changing, but no one talks about it. And I remember when I was in fashion design school, going through fashion history, I was like, oh my gosh, we're actually learning about men's beauty standards. I'm surprised they actually taught that. I'm surprised people are talking about it. But they had such little information on it. It was the smallest little section that we got to study. And I took a deep dive into it because I was like, this needs to be more known. There's been different changes throughout history, okay? Currently, in this day and age, at least in the western part of the world, which is US and Canada, the ideal man is tall, at least 6 feet tall, has facial symmetry with a nice little ruggedness to it. They are in reasonable shape or they're ripped. They have a good head of hair, typically dark, styled, but not messy. And they cannot be bald, but if they are balding, then they should be all bald. If they're older, they need a full head of gray hair to be a silver fox. They have facial hair, but not too much, and it has to be well groomed. Another big thing with men's beauty standards that a lot of people overlook, especially with those bodybuilders you see, they actually are struggling. Because there is something here called, what's it called? Muscle dysphoria or bigorexia. This condition is characterized by one's obsession to bodybuilding and building muscle and or strength while lifting smart and in moderation has benefits. Taking it too far can do more harm than good. So it's a form of body dysmorphia where you don't think you are muscular enough and you keep overdoing it to fit this ideal. A lot of men also fall into orthorexia, which is an obsession with clean eating and being healthy. Now, it doesn't sound like it's all that bad, but too much of a good thing can be bad, and they do get so obsessed with tracking calories, tracking their weight, tracking their fitness, all that it becomes an obsession and they can't function properly without constantly keeping up with all this and constantly not going out to eat with friends because they have to make what they're having. They have to do this. They have to look like that. They can't ruin their routine. Section 5, psychological effects. A lot of beauty standards are known to have both physical and psychological effects on everyone, whether you're man, woman, transgender, non-binary, everyone gets affected. These beauty standards often lead to people having low self-esteem, body issues, and in worst cases leads to eating disorders. And that is really serious and actually life-threatening. Eating disorders are one of the most deadly, if not the most deadly, mental illnesses in the world because they're not only psychological, they're also physical. It is a serious problem and a lot of people do struggle with it. With all the media that's going around, all these celebrities and beauty ads, it's hard to escape not comparing yourself. It's hard not to compare yourself because you'll see tons of people on social media and your brain will just instantly be like, well, why don't I look like that? Or you'll be following a workout or a diet plan and you're like, why aren't I seeing these results? And a lot of people get so discouraged and obsessed with trying to fit a beauty standard that's just going to change in the next year anyways, that they cause serious harm to their well-being. And it's scary and it's sad. And a lot of people are struggling, whether they are, you could physically see they are, or it's all internal and no one has any ideas until it's too late. So what can we do to not let these toxic beauty standards rule us? It's difficult, and there's not just one answer. Of course, limiting who you're following and who you're listening to and knowing yourself. I don't know. I always recommend to people that you take a look at who you're following and thinking about, like, is this content harmful? When I see this person post, do I fall into the trap of self-comparison? If that's the case, unfollow them. If you are around people that judge the way you look, what you eat, anything like that, distance yourself. You don't need to be around people like that. Just simply reflecting on yourself and knowing your worth, who you are at the end of the day. I know that's hard. It's a hard thing to figure out. And just being around people that accept you for you and not obsessing over celebrities and body image, as hard as it is, if it is something that you do struggle with, do get help, please, because I don't want anyone to be hurt by the world. It's just not, it's not good. You deserve to be happy and confident in what you look like, and just try to build up some self-esteem over time, whether that's journaling or going to therapy, just kind of figuring out what makes you you and being proud of that and not letting either internal or external sources bring you down. I hope you found this video informational, I guess is the best way to put it. This is a pretty important topic, and I'm very passionate about people, feeling like themselves and not being compared and finding that self-confidence and their actual beauty. You don't have to look like celebrities. You don't have to get expensive surgeries. You don't have to diet. You don't have to limit your intake. Just be you. That's all you need to be. I know it sounds cliche, but it's true. Life is too short to worry about your appearance. As long as you have good hygiene, you're able to just feel secure and safe. That's what matters. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. Please do share your thoughts on beauty standards below. Have you struggled with toxic beauty standards? Have you overcome it? Is it something you're still struggling with? Please let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye! Aww. Sweet Tiki.